So, good day to each one of you. For today's lesson, we will be discussing the chapter 4, Methodology and Design in our book. So, allow me to speak. So, good afternoon again to each one of you. For the lesson's objectives, I want you to take note of this. Number one, choose the appropriate quantitative research design for your paper or for your study. Then, describe the sampling procedure and the sample. Then you have to construct an instrument and establish its validity and reliability. Then next, describe intervention if it's applicable for your research. And if not, don't mind it. And number 5, plan the data collection procedure. Number 6, plan the data analysis using statistics and hypothesis testing. And you have to know what is the appropriate statistical treatment for your data analysis. And the last one is you are going to present a well-written research methodology. So let's proceed. So it states here that methodology contains the processes and steps taken in data gathering for research. So one of the most important thing whenever we are doing a research is for us to conduct for us to have this methodology. So as stated there, processes and steps taken in order for us to gather data for our research. So now we will be facing with our not totally face-to-face interaction with our participants, but we are now dealing with how we are going to get a certain information in order for us to answer our statement of the problem. And next, this chapter also contains the context, or when we say context, the locality and the participants, just like what I have mentioned earlier, the instruments or the tools that we are going to use, the um, data gathering procedure and how we are going to get the data from our participants, or how we are going to get the information that we are going to use to answer our statement of the problem, and the data analysis procedure on how we are going to, yes, analyze the data that we have gathered from our participants. So those are the things that you are about to expect when you are dealing with the research methodology. So let's proceed. So, gathering and generating data, having established what previous researchers have discovered, documented, and published on the topic of interest, the next step in conducting the studies, and generating new data. So, just like what we have during our PR1 days, so I believe that all of you um, are really done, or you have experience um, dealing with your methodology before. So just like what I have said in there, so in this part, we are about to deal with our participants on how we are going to get the information needed for our paper in order for us to answer our statement of the problem. And that has been the most essential part in order for us to answer our initial inquiry. So, lagi nilang tatandaan that in this part of research, aside from we are going to gather information, we are now about to experience and to encounter our participants. So let's proceed. So quantitative research is classified into 5 general kinds, or the common research designs, such as the so let's define first what is research design before we identify what are the different kinds of research design we have for quantitative research. So when we say research design, so just like what it was defined during our PR1, it is an overall strategy that a researcher uses to logically and coherently integrate the various components of the study. So in here, um, one of the most important thing when we are dealing or when we are conducting a research is for us researcher to identify what is the research design of the study, because this one will help us to know what are the information or what are the kind of information that we are about to have for our for a certain research study. So as you can still remember, during our title proposal, one of our consideration there is for us to identify what is our research design. So since this is the overall strategy or one of the most important thing when we are conducting a research, it's because research design is also the kind of information needed for our paper. Okay, so next. So in here, um, quantitative is classified into 5 general kinds, such as we have descriptive, correlational, ex post facto, quasi-experimental, and pure or experimental research. Each of these kind has its corresponding research design, or each of these kinds has its own characteristics. So let's proceed. So one of the characteristic of descriptive research design, it aims to observe and report a certain phenomena, such as a type of behavior or trait. As it takes place or manifests itself, the researchers achieve this objective by using rating scales and other means to measure the variable as they occur. One limitation of descriptive design is its inability to establish causal relationships. Okay? That is, one variable cannot be claimed as the cause of other or another variable. Because in descriptive design or descriptive research design, it simply observe and report a certain phenomena or a specific phenomena. So in order for us to observe this and to know what is the how we are going to report the data using the descriptive design, we are going to use the scale. So, or the Likert scale in order for us to know or to rate the percentage or to identify the scale of the particular phenomenon that we are trying to measure or to observe. So, in this part, you as a researcher, if you have this kind of research design in descriptive or descriptive research design, please refrain from using the kind of scale which only have the dichotomous question, which is the yes or no, or yung mga may dalawang pinagpipilian lang na questions or answer rather. So you should avoid that kasi magiging limited lang po yung response ng ating mga participants if we have that kind of scale. So, more likely, we are to use yung ordinal scale na tinatawag natin or Likert scale na tinatawag natin yung meron always, never, sometimes, yung mga ganong kind of questionnaire in order for us to coherently and appropriately know the result of our study. So in here, these are the things that you have to remember when you are dealing with descriptive research. So next one, we have the correlational design. So another quantitative research design is a correlational type. The aim of the correlational research design is to determine whether an increase or decrease in one variable corresponds to increase or decrease in one another. It does not seek to establish a cause and effect relationship and mere association among variables. This is thus like in the descriptive type of research, experimental manipulation is not used in correlational design. Variables still measured as they occur. So in this type of a quantitative research or the correlational research, we just simply know or we simply determine what is the association between and among the variables that we have. So keep in mind that when you are dealing with correlational design, you are just after with the relationship, association, and covariance of the said variables. You are not after with cause and effect relationship or cause and effect of this of the variables. Okay, you just have to measure if one is increases or the other is decreases. So manipulation is not used as I have mentioned, and variables are measured as they occur. So more likely when we are measuring a correlational type of research, we also uses the Likert scale in order for us to know the relationship between or among the two or among the variables that we have. So now let's proceed with another type of quantitative research design, which is the third one, the ex post facto type or ex post facto research. This aims to infer a cause from the already existing effects. So although this research design attempts to establish a causal relationship between variables, the ex post facto research design does not use experimental manipulation. Thus, it cannot be said that a change in a variable takes place in actual study. Like the descriptive type, the ex post facto research design is used when the study is being conducted in exploratory and little is known about the phenomenon or behavior being studied. So for ex post facto research design, though we are dealing with cause and effect relationship, so in here we are to know who among the cause or effect is the most greatest variables that can affect the independent variables that we have. So the three mentioned research design such as descriptive, correlational, and ex post facto research design is under the non-experimental research. Okay, so let's proceed with the last two design. So the last two kinds of research design can be distinguished for the presence of an intervention applied to the subjects of the study. So when we say an intervention or treatment, it involves the manipulation of the independent variable in an experimentation or in an experiment. So the presence of the intervention can be attributed as the cause of changes in the independent variable. So intervention or treatment is also known the experimentation that we are about to implement in a certain quasi or pure experimental research design. So keep in mind that when you are dealing with the last design of research, it is very important that you know what is the intervention or the treatment that you are going to use for your research. Okay? So next, the group of participants subjected to intervention are referred as a treatment group or experimental research design. So the one that we are going to implement with our intervention or experimentation, we call them as the experimental group. While on the other hand, the control group refers to the participants not subjected to any intervention, or they are just um, the usual group of people or group of participants that we are going to use in order for us to know the difference between the treatment group and the control group. So, interventions are usually utilized in quasi-experimental and pure experimental research. So, let's proceed with quasi-experimentals. For quasi-experimental research, it aims to establish the causal relationship between the two variables. So, this effect is presumed to be occurred during the study itself. So the goal of this experimental research design or the quasi-experimental research design, so yan, it again established the causal relationship between the two variables. So we believe that whenever we are dealing with quasi-experimental and pure experimental research design, we have this independent and dependent variables. Okay? This means that experimental manipulation is applied to the subjects to some extent. It should be noted that quasi-experimental designs divided the subjects into intact groups. So one of the most characteristic of a quasi-experimental is for us to establish an intact group. So when we say intact group, this has been established, okay, has been established before the study takes place. So how we are going to have that? For instance, it may be a group of individuals with the same educational background, same nationality, same age bracket, etc., and so on and so forth. So before you conduct a quasi-experimental, So you have to establish your intact group. So intact group can be defined with the same characteristic or set set characteristic of the participants. Like for example, if you are pertaining to the COVID patient, so um, the effect of COVID or the COVID patients itself. So, when you are dealing with that, so for quasi-experimental, kung gusto mo, COVID patient, age bracket from 16 to 20 years old, so you have to look for a participant with that age bracket that also experiencing or have done or gone through COVID-19 um, virus o yung virus natin ng COVID-19. So in that group again is you are having the same characteristic among your participants. So unlike with the experimental research design, also known as true experimental design, okay? So in addition, again, with the quasi-experimental, sorry. So um, because of this intact group, it is necessary to ensure, okay, it is necessary to ensure matching between the two groups based on the relevant observation characteristics such as education, aptitude, age, and wealth. Since participants are not randomly assigned to either the treatment or control group, this is the lack of randomness in this type of research design. Because of this, quasi-experimental design provides limited conclusiveness in establishing the causal relationship between the two or between and among the variables that we have. And the final quantitative research design is the experimental type, which also known as a true experimental research. So like an ex post facto and quasi-experimental design, the pure experimental type also aims to establish the cause and effect relationship. Unlike the quasi-experimental design, however, the experimental type applies variable manipulation more extensively. Moreover, it does not only assign group but specific individuals to control and treatment groups. This ensures greater control on the part of the researcher and other less threats to the validity of the study, despite of the rigidness of the experimental design. It is it it is it has some limitations. First, not all variables can be experimentally controlled and manipulated. Second, some procedure in experimental design may be impractical and unethical, as it in this case of clinical setting. And the third one, studies under experimental design may be prone to Hawthorne effect. Unlike ex post facto design, the Hawthorne effect is just like what we have mentioned during our PR1 days. Hawthorne effect is the observed change in the behavior of the participants who know that they are being observed. And because of that, um, the um, the observation or the effect or the result of the study may change because of the behavior of our participants. So again, in experimental research design, it also manipulates the results of the study on what are the things that you are expecting to be the result of the study or what would be the result of or the possible result of the study. Okay, so let's proceed. So not all variables can be manipulated or controlled, such as the extraneous variables that can affect your study. So just like I have mentioned earlier, some procedures may be impractical and unethical. And Hawthorne effect refers to the observed change in the behavior due to, consciousness that they are under observation. So one of the example of Hawthorne effect is that when you are during our yun nga po yung physical schooling, 'di ba? When someone announces that we are having an observation with Sergi, so syempre yung behavior ninyo as a student, So, syempre, magbabago yun kasi someone is observing you and you're not giving what is your natural response in a specific um, phenomenon. Like, for example, that observation. So, syempre, kung si Sir J nag-observe sa inyo, behave kayo. And, unlike kapag si teacher lang yun nandun, some of you are keep on talking with your friends, some of you are keep on chatting with your friends. So, syempre, pag si Sir G yun, wala. Kahit hindi nyo alam yung sagot, magtataas kayo ng kamay. Kasi para lang mapakita kay Sir G na you are really listening with your teacher. So, that's Hawthorne effect. And what is the indication of Hawthorne effect? It may affect the results. Siyempre, hindi na natin ipapakita yung usual or yung yung nangyayari talaga in an actual setting. Kasi nagbabago nga yun based on your mindset na dapat mas maging maayos kayo because someone is observing you. Okay? So, one of the special type of a quantitative research is the prototyping. So, in prototyping, is a developmental approach or development approach to improve the planning and execution of creative designs such as software and technology development. So, typically performed for experimental purposes, and a good example of this, prototyping is the development of World Wide Web o yung triple W dot natin. So, um, you as UMS STEM and TVL students, so more likely for students, so paano ba pag sige, pag ano na lang, STEM. So, for STEM students, so more likely, you are doing this prototyping during your capstone where you are tasked to create or to make a tangible project which shows with the integration of technology and more likely during my capstone days na nagkaroon ako ng subject nito, most of my students from STEM and ICT class, they are using the Arduino Uno for them to make a good output or a good product for their capstone project. And also, um, for another type of, for prototyping, so prototyping is typically performed for an experimental purposes. Okay? For instance, use of World Wide Web or Internet, and some of the usual procedure in developing the prototypes are to identify the objective of developing this prototyping, identify the risk, formulate the hypothesis, and construct the prototype, and examine the result. So that's the special type of quantitative research is the prototyping. So let's proceed now with the research locale and the research participants of the study. So for the locale, this section explains the place and environment where this study is being conducted. So where, so typo lang po yan. It's WHERE. So do I need to discuss what is locale? So again, locality is where you are going to conduct or the place where you are going to have your study. So participants are the respondents of the study. So this section explains the number and the characteristic or description of the participants involved in the study. So these two are much important when we are conducting a research since from the locale where we are going to get the participants and the participants where we are going to get the information that we are going to use for our data analysis or for the data of our paper. So I believe as a researchers, so you already know who are the participants and how you are going to get your participant at this very moment. Okay, let's proceed with the sampling for research. So one of the most important thing also for us to identify the research participants is to consider the sampling, the samples and the sampling methods. So when we say sampling, it refers to the process of systematically selecting individuals, units, or group to be analyzed during the conduct of the study. The reason for selecting the samples is to get the information about the target population. So, the population is a group of persons or objects that are possess some common characteristics that are interest to the researchers and about which the researcher seeks to learn more. So, the reason for selecting the sample is to get the information about the target population. Thus, it is the goal in the research to make sure that the sample selected represent the target population. So, when we say target population, it is composed of the entire group of people or objects to which the researcher wishes to generalize the findings of this study, while the accessible population is a portion of the population which the researcher has reasonable access. So like for example, a study about the common difficulties encountered by the senior high school in the first semester of the school year 2016-2017, the target population may be all the senior high school students in Metro Manila, while the accessible population, however, the researcher may access only the students of specific school, which is the research locale. These students comprise the accessible population. So, researchers commonly select samples for the study rather the entire population due to constraint in budget, time, and manpower. A good example should be representative of the population, such as the characteristic of the population, especially those pertinent to the study, are reflected on the sample with fair amount of accuracy. So as you can see, one of the most important thing before we are going to select our participants is to know the sampling technique. So, sampling technique is the procedure on how we are going to get our target participants and what is the number of our target participants. So, there are four ways, okay, four ways in determining the sample size that you can use to determine your sample of the study for your paper or for your study. So, the first one, we have the heuristic. We have the literature review for the second one. The third one is the formulas, and the fourth one is the power analysis. So let's have first the heuristics. So heuristic is a term, okay, heuristic is a term normally used in quantitative studies such as a research approach utilizes, okay, introspection. So in a quantitative introspection, um, just like with your qualitative research, introspection is how we are going to view our participants based on their characteristics. So, introspection, so that's for heuristic. Um, Heuristic again refers to the rule of thumb for the sample size of used in the study. So, according to heuristic, they are giving us this specific or distinct number of participants based on the research design that we are going to use for our studies. So take note of this. For survey, okay, you are going to have 800 participants. For correlational, you are going to have 100 to 200 participants. For exposed factor, you are going to have 30 plus participants, and for experimental you're going to have 30 or more participants. So since we are experiencing difficulties in our situation right now, I'll be limiting your participants. For survey or descriptive design, I'm going to limit your participants from 100 to 200 participants para hindi na rin kayo masyadong mahirapan. And for correlational design, ililimit ko na lang siya muna ng 50 to 100. And for exposed factor, sige, 15 to 30. And again, for experimental, 30 to 30 or more. So again, for descriptive, 100 to 200. Okay, that's for descriptive. Again, for correlational, we are going to have 50 to 100. For exposed factor, we are going to deal with 15 to 30. And experimental is 10 to 30. So, keep in mind that, yun nga, binago ko lang siya for the sake of hindi na kayo mahirapan in getting your participants because we are experiencing a lot of difficulties nowadays. So, in N represents the population. So, again, it refers to the rule of thumb for the sample size used in the study. So, that's the first one. The second one, we have the literature review. So, you may wanted to read studies to yours and check the sample size that they use. So, in here, these studies can serve as a reference in providing the validity of the sample size that you are planned to use. So, if you are going to use literature review, you are about to, ayun nga po, mag-search lang tayo ng or kung meron tayong mother thesis or reference thesis prior to this study, so we can use yung number ng participants na ginamit natin. So, literature review can justify the idea of the idea of selecting your participants using other references. Okay? So, wala pong number yung literature review kasi it depends nga po dun sa makukuha natin reference thesis, kung ilan yung ginamit nila, that is the time na i-adapt lang po natin siya. So, it depends on them if they are to use for descriptive, kung gagamit lang sila ng 100 to 500. So, pwede natin siyang gamitin. And that's already a way on how we are going to determine the sample size of the study. Again, the sample size is the number of your participants. So, let's proceed with the formula. So, determining the size with the use of formula. So, the third strategy is using formulas. So, there are a lot of formulas that we are about to use when we are doing a quantitative research, especially when we are dealing with a large number of population or number or sample size. So, we are going to use a formula. So, another one is the power analysis, the most precise. From the statistical power, okay, we are using is this power analysis. So this one is the last strategy that you can use in determining the sample size. Among the four strategies, power analysis the most considered most precise, as suggested by its name. The strategy is founded on the principle of statistical power. So when we say statistical power, it refers to the probability of rejecting a false null hypothesis, thus suggesting that there is indeed a relationship between independent and dependent variables. So ideally, a study possesses a statistical power of 80%. So the power analysis is then used to determine the sample size sufficient for measuring the effect size or treatment. So, effect size is one of the most important thing when we are doing the power analysis. It refers to the degree of the difference between the control and the treatment group. So, if the statistical power indicates the existence of relationship between the independent variables, the effect size indicates the extent of the relationship between these two variables. The higher the effect size, the greater the difference between the control and different. For example, your research reveals that there is a difference between the pretest and post-test scores of the students in the standardized science test after implementing specific teaching approach. Without computing the effect size, we do not without computing for this effect size, we do not know whether this difference small or large. So we do not know how much intervention can affect the result of the study. So that's power analysis. Again, there are four ways on how we are going to determine the sample size. The first one is the heuristics. So the second one is the literature review. The third one is the formulas, and the fourth one is the power analysis. So again, statistical power and the effect size. So quantitative often employ the random sampling technique. So which means we are talking with the um, a random sampling technique define as you are giving an equal opportunity for each participants or for each for the entire population to be selected and be part of the study being conducted by the researchers. Okay? So, in qualitative studies, researchers often use purposive sampling or the deliberate selection of sample based on their characteristics. So, probability sampling is one of the most used when we are dealing with quantitative research. It is a type of sampling in which the members of the entire population have a chance of being selected. This is also called a scientific sampling. So there are different types of probability sampling. The first one is the simple random sampling. Is a method of choosing the sample in which the members of the populations are given an equal chance of being selected. There are various ways in obtaining samples through simple random sampling. These include the fishbowl method, the roulette method, and the snowball method. So in here, since you are about to give an equal opportunity with your participants, so you are to choose between the three kung fishbowl ba siya, kung fishbowl method ba siya, kung snowball or roulette method. But for us, since we are dealing with this pandemic, so um, siguro pumili na lang kayo ng most convenient way on how you are going to use simple random sampling. So, kung fishbowl, kung meron kayong list of students, so much better where you can get a bowl and then you put all the names and then pick na lang kayo kung ilang participants yung kailangan niyo. While for snowball naman po, ito yung turuturuan kung sino yung tatanungin mo yung participants if o yung first participants mo kung may isasuggest silang other participants for you. So um that's that's snowball. And for roulette or yung roulette method, so you are going to use meron naman tayong application for that. Then you write all the names of your prospect or your population and the entire population, then saselect na lang kayo kung ilan yung magiging participants niyo. So that's simple random sampling. So next one, we also have the stratified random sampling, the population if the divided into different strata and then sampling follows. So meron silang specific strata or characteristics. So yan, in terms of age, gender, educational qualifications, and some of the possible criteria used to divide the population into different strata. So, the cluster sampling naman po is the geographically spread out. Okay? So, sampling procedures may be difficult and time-consuming. So, for cluster sampling, we are using this one if we have a very large or vague kind of research paper. More likely, we are using cluster sampling if, yun nga po yung mga ito yung mga type of survey na they are after with the performance of um, presidency of our current president, Mr. Rodrigo Duterte. So, cluster sampling can be used also kung ano yung satisfaction rate ng mga nakatira sa Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. Okay, so masyadong malaki pag cluster sampling, so hindi po natin siya gamitin. So, for systematic sampling naman po, it is a method of selecting every element of the population, every 5th, 8th, 9th, 11th element, until the desired sample size is reached. So just like what we have done during your PR1, di ba, kung if you can still remember those days na diniscuss natin to. So, nagbilang tayo. For example, I'll be setting every 8 of the group, yun yung kukunin kong magiging participant. So, bibilang tayo. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So, kung pang 8 si Chua, so kukunin natin si Chua. So, bilang ulit tayo. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Kung pang 8 si Lexi, so kukunin natin si Lexi. So, hanggang makuha natin desired sample size. Kung 800, so 800 times ka rin magbibilang ng pang 8 samples, pang 8 element. Okay, so that's systematic sampling. So let's proceed. So yan po. So that's the type of random sampling. So the first one, we have yun nga po yung tinatawag nating, the first one, we have the simple random. The second one is stratified. Third one is the cluster. And the fourth one is the systematic sampling. Okay? So, in selecting the sample of the study, the following element must be properly discussed among the participants. So, the total number of population and its parameter, the sample and its statistics, if any, or applicable, the sampling method, which with reference to support it, an explanation and discussion of sampling method, an explanation on how the sampling was done, and an enumeration of qualifying criteria, the profiles of the subjects and or respondents or participants. So these things are very much important when we are to select our participants. So don't forget those things na magagamit natin. And also, in addition, we also have the non-probability sampling, which is the purposive and convenience sampling. If do you think this one or this non-probability sampling is applicable for your study, especially if you are dealing with quasi-experimental, then make use of that. Okay, pa again, purposive sampling is one of the most judgmental kind of sampling technique that we are going to use, because prior hand we are about to set what kind of participants are we going to have for our research, while convenience sampling is based on the availability of our target respondents. And also, that's why it's convenience sampling, the convenience in the part of the researchers and the participants. Okay, so let's proceed now with the research instrument. Don't worry, because we are going to discuss this also with our synchronous session. So, nadi-discuss ko lang siya ngayon for us to, kasi baka hindi natin siya matapos during our synchronous, so at least we have backup. So, I'll be going back in some of the most important thing na na we are going to deal with our methodology, especially with this one, research instrument. So, yun, i-discuss naman natin siya thoroughly with our synchronous session. So when we say research design, when conducting a research, you need to prepare and implement the appropriate instrument to gather the data that you need. So research design will help us to, or this is the tool that we are going to use in order for us to appropriately gather the information that we are about to use in answering our statement of the problem. So, are tools to use gathered in a particular research topic. So, we have interviews, we have kinds of research design, we have interviews, observation, performance-based, or paper and pencil, and the questionnaires. So take note, observation, interview, assessment, or performance tasks are prone to subjectivity. Consider having coder and evaluator. Coder and evaluator are the ones who will objectively assess the output or the outcome of observation interview being conducted by the researcher, who will be the decoder or the evaluator, who will be the coder or the evaluator in the study. This is someone that is not from the researchers. So pwedeng mag-invite kayo ng someone that is knowledgeable in that kind of, especially kung about psychological problems. So, pwede kayong mag-invite ng mga professional like psychologists for them to properly assess yung nangyayari dun sa participants natin, especially if you are dealing with stress, anxiety, and depression. So, yun po. Intercoder or interrater agreement refers to the level of occurrence between the scores given by two or more raters. So, they are the ones who decide, yun nga po yung sinabi natin kanina, objectively assess the performance of our participants based on the instrument being used to assess their um, behaviors. So next, so we also have the three ways in developing the instrument for N or for our population. So the first one, we have the adapting. The third one is we have the modify. And the third one, we have the create your own instrument. Okay, so let's proceed the first one. So adapting, this means that you will utilize an instrument that has been used in a well-known institution or reputable studies and publications. So when you are to adopt an instrument, so I suggest that now when you are going to look for your instrument, so it is very convenient for us to just adapt and modify our research, not to create your own, kasi kapag na-create your own tayo, later we'll discuss. So adapting and modifying is one of the things na pwede nating we are to use for developing or creating your instrumentation. So adapting, this means that you are going to utilize. So you have to look for a reference thesis, and if you have one, so you have to see yung kanilang ginamit na instrument. If you think that is applicable, and that's the time that you are going to modify. So to change its content based on your study. So, i-re-realign lang natin yung laman ng instrumentation nila or nung survey nila, nung questionnaire nila na ginamit nila for their research to our research. If you can find Likert scale that can measure the stress level of the participants, and if you think that is not totally suitable for your paper, so you can change some words that can actually determine the ayun nga, para mas ma-measure natin yung gusto nating malaman for your study. So, those things are interrelated with one another, the adapting and modifying of the instrumentation. While the other one is the create your own. So, formal create your own and undergo to the validity and reliability test. So, that's why when, just like what I have mentioned earlier, medyo matrabaho kapag gagawa tayo ng ating instrument. Okay? So, as you develop your instrument, be guided by the instrument used in the studies similar to your use. Similar to yours, sorry. Make sure, however, that the items contained in the instrument are aligned with the research question and objectives. Yun nga po. So, that's why you are going to modify the questionnaires that you have found sa internet or somewhere para mas maging fit siya dun sa study natin or dun sa hinahanap natin. Remember, you have different or another set of statement of the problem. So, you have to see to it na yung instrument na makukuha natin or gagawin natin is directly answering the statement of the problem that we have. Kasi kung hindi, what is the use? Bakit pa tayo humanap ng instrument? Or bakit mo pa gagamitin yun? So, more likely, dapat talaga align siya kay statement of the problem or kay objective of the study. Remember that inadequacy of your research instrument will yield inaccurate data, thereby making the results of your study questionable. So, just like what I have mentioned, so kung sa research instrument is not aligned or not really into your research question or research problem, it may also, yun nga po, it's useless na nagkaroon tayo ng instrument na yan. And also, makakakuha tayo ng data that is not really or not really for answering the statement of the problem of our research. So, parang nag-aksay lang tayo ng panahon natin sa mga bagay na hindi naman pala appropriate or hindi naman accurate. So, ayun po. So, next, create your own. So, you have to undergo with the validity. So, validity refers to the degree to which the instrument measure what is supposed to measure. For example, in measuring the speaking proficiency of the students, speaking performances have greater validity than multiple choices. So, in order for us to assess the speaking ability of a person, so syempre, we have to conduct speaking tests. So, you let them speak, and then you just have a set of questionnaires to assess them. Not to use pencil and paper to assess that. Kasi, yun nga, in-assess mo nga yung speaking ability, then you are going to, or you are going to ask them to take an examination. So, how will you know if that person has a fluency in the language if you are merely asking them answering a set of questions using a test questionnaire? So, that's the use of validity. Okay, this is because multiple choice tests do not necessarily require the students to demonstrate their speaking skills. Speaking performances, on the other hand, is oblige students to show their actual communication skills, that there is a guarantee that this is the variable that is being measured. So just like in for your study, so you have to keep in mind talaga na yung mga tools na gagamitin natin for our paper, for our the tools or the instrumentation that we are about to implement for our participants is the kind of questionnaire needed for us to measure what are the things that supposed to measure in our study. Okay? So validity has several types, namely face validity, content validity, construct validity, concurrent validity, and predictive validity. Okay, so let's proceed now. An instrument has face validity. So first one is the validity, when it appears to measure the variables being studied. So hence, so checking for face validity is subjective process. So yan, why is it subjective process? Is it does not ensure the instrument has actual validity. So when we say face validity, this is the physical appearance of your instrumentation, wherein you as a researcher, you will assess or you will check what is the actual appearance of your questionnaire. Like for example, the font size, is it enough for them to make the paper, the questionnaire can be readable? Or the font size, the font style. Syempre, when you are conducting a survey, syempre, you should use appropriate font style. Not, you're not going to use yung mga calligraphy natin or such kind of font style na hindi readable. So, dapat yung mga sans, sa mga yung gagamitin natin dyan, yung Arial, um, yan, Times New Roman. So, yun, even the margins are very much important. And also, yung paglalagay natin ng yung pagkasunod-sunod ng mga exam or nung questionnaire from easy to moderate and to difficult. Like, sa first, syempre, true or false muna, then the multiple choice, and then the latter part is the essay. So, ganun. Dapat, when you are doing your instrumentation, na nakikita rin natin yung arrangement of the examination, kung appropriate ba siya or good ba siya. Okay, that's face validity. So, next, let's proceed with the content validity. So, refers to the degree to which the instrument covers a representative sample or specific elements of the variables to be measured. So in here, it is similar to face validity. We are assessing the content validity is a subjective process which is done with the help of the list of specification. When we say list of specification or yung table of specification, so ito po yung paper na ginagawa muna namin, or if you are a teacher, so more likely nakikita nyo to kung meron kayong kilalang teacher before we are going to have or to make a examination. So gagawa kami ng list of specification wherein we will be writing all the things that we are um, we want to see from the examination. Like for example, in research, So, bago kami gumawa ng examination, tinitingnan muna namin kung ano yung mga lesson na naturo namin from introduction to methodology. And then, i-rate namin yun kung ilang oras, ilang linggo namin na ituro. And then, list of or table of specification will now compute kung ilang items yung mabibigay namin with each topics or micro components of that particular topic. Okay? So, next. So, construct validity is a third type of validity. It is the degree in which an instrument measures the variables being studied as a whole. Thus, the instrument is able to detect what should exist theoretically. A construct is often intangible or abstract variable such as personality, intelligence, or mood. If your instrument cannot detect this intangible construct, it is considered invalid. So, for construct validity, so as you can see, this is the how you are going to make your questions in your um, instrument. Okay? So, as you can see, kung kanina sa content, in-identify natin even the micro components. And in construct validity, we will now see if the set of questions are really pertaining to such topic. Like for example, kung yung question for sampling technique is really pertaining for methodology or not. Kasi under siya nun. So, ganun po yung construct validity. Measuring as a whole or yung kabuuan nung mismong examination. Tinitingnan natin ngayon kung yung examination na to is after for practical research questions or practical research to examinations. So, that's construct validity. So, next. So, for concurrent validity, when it is able, okay, criterion validity can be typed as a concurrent and predictive. An instrument has concurrent validity when it is able to predict results similar to those of a test already validated in the past. So, in some instances, concurrent validity is said to be ensured when two instruments are employed simultaneously. So, an example of testing concurrently validity in whether an admission test procedures, okay, procedures result similar to those national achievement tests. On the other hand, an instrument has predictive validity when it produces results similar to those another instrument that will employ in the future. An example of test, testing predictive validity is employing college admission tests in mathematics. This may be used to predict the future performance of the students in mathematics. Okay, so again, we have the different types of validity. So the first one, we have the phase. The second, we have the content validity. The third one, we have the construct validity. And the fourth one, we have the criterion validity. And under criterion, we have the two types, which is the concurrent and predictive validity. So let us now proceed with the instrument reliability. So, another important factor that you need to consider when you are going to prepare an instrument or the tools for your research is their reliability. So, when we say reliability, it refers to the consistency of the instrument's measures. Okay? Consistency of the measures of our instrumentation. So, reliability is also an aspect involved in the accuracy of measurement. So there are four, okay? There are four types of reliability. We have the test retest. Second, we have the equivalent forms reliability, the internal consistency reliability or the IC reliability, and the inter-rater reliability. So again, gagawin lang po natin ang lahat ng ito if we are to create our own instrument. But if we are to adopt and modify a questionnaire, ang gagamitin lang po natin is the validity. Okay? So let's have first the test-retest validity. So test-retest validity is achieved by administering an instrument twice to the same group of participants and by computing the consistency of the score. It is often ideal to conduct the test-retest for a short period of time. For example, 2 weeks. So, magpapa-exam ako ngayon. So, another week, ipapa-exam ko ulit yung examination na yun. In order to record the higher correlation between the variable tested in the study. So, that is test retest. We are conducting the same set of examination in a short period of time. So, uulitin lang natin siya. That's why test retest. Examination this week, then another week, magpapa-exam ako with the same set of question, with the same level of difficulty, and the same test questionnaire itself. So that is test retest. And the second one, we have the equivalent forms reliability. So it is measured by administering two tests, identical in all aspects except the actual wording of items. The two tests have the same coverage or level of difficulty. So in short, the two tests have the same coverage or level of difficulty, test type, and format. An example of the procedure involving equivalent forms reliability is administering the pre-test and post-test. So, yun. That's for equivalent forms reliability. So, for internal consistency, or the IC reliability, is it measure of how well the items in two instrument measure the same construct, okay, same construct of the um, paper or the instrument. There are three ways in measuring the IC reliability. The first one, we have the split half method or split half coefficient. Third one, we have the Hornbach's alpha Kudner-Rickardson formula. So let's have first the split half methods or split half coefficient. So for split half coefficient or split half reliability, it is often obtained by administering a single instrument aimed at measuring only one construct, while computing the results are divided into two sets of comparison. However, upon computing the results, the items of the instrument are divided or split into two tests or two sets. The result of these two are then compared with each other. So, ganun po si split half method. So, we are going to divide or split our questions or our set of questions into two sets, and the results of these two sets are being compared by one another. So let's proceed now with the Cronbach's alpha. It measures the reliability with the respect to each and construct being examined by the instrument. So lastly, we have the Kudner-Rickardson formula, the test reliability in terms of instrument of dichotomous nature, such as the yes or no test. So, if you are to check the reliability of yes or no or dichotomous or um, yan, yung dalawa lang yung pagpipilian na set of answers, so we are going to use the Kudner-Rickardson formula. So, again, we are going to utilize these sets of reliability, the test retest, the equivalent forms reliability, the internal consistency, if we are going to have or we are going to create our own instrument. So, kaya sobrang ano niya, sobrang not totally hassle, but napakamatrabaho niya if we are about to create our own. Especially ngayon, pandemic, syempre, mahihirapan tayo if we are to create kasi it would be hard for us to assess or to get the reliability of our questionnaire since, yun nga po, yung actual scenario natin, ang hirap pag laging online lang yung pinagdadaanan. Okay? So finally, there is the last one is the inter-rater reliability, which measures the consistency of the scores assigned by two or more raters or certain set of results. Okay? So, the kappa coefficient is one of the most popular statistical tools in measuring the inter-rater reliability. Okay, the higher value of kappa coefficient, the more the reliable the instrument. The coefficient value of at least 0.70 indicates that the instrument is reliable. So, let's proceed now with the informed consent form. So, informed consent form is a document that explains the objectives of the study and the extent of the participants' involvement in your research. So, one of the most important thing is to secure your informed consent form when you are going to conduct your survey. Because, again, we are going to get information from our participants. We will be requiring them to give some information from their own perspective, from their self-experiences. So, of course, so in due credit, we are giving a proper, we are doing, ayun nga po, formal way of asking them with such information by the use of informed consent form. So, in your informed consent form, so nandiyan na lahat, yung objective of the study, and also the permission of your participants that they are more than willing to be part or be the respondents of the study or to answer your survey questionnaire. So, mahalaga po siya. Wag niyong kakalimutan. So, another one, we utilize triangulation in your method. It is a technique for validating data using two or more sources or methods. So, for data analysis procedure, it involves the use of statistical tests to address your research question and objectives. So, again, if you are going to go back with our research design, there are different types of statistical treatment that is appropriate for each research design. So, you have to keep in mind na dapat kung ano yung klaseng research design yung gagamitin ninyo, you use the appropriate statistical treatment for us to analyze our data. So, in data analysis procedure, we will be using statistical tests to address your research question and research objective. And by the use of statistical treatment na gagamitin natin, the appropriate statistical treatment, we're now able to answer our statement of the problem. So, the first one, if you are dealing with descriptive design, of course, more likely we are to use the frequency, but you can also search for what are the different types of statistical tests that we can use for descriptive design. So, yung iba ginagamit nila yung percentage in identifying analyzing the research um, problem or research results of the data. So, the second one, we have the correlational design. We are going to use for research design of correlational, we are going to use the Pearson's R correlation in order for us to know the significant relationship among and between the variables. And the third one, we have the exposed factor. We are going to use the can use the t-test. We can also use the ANOVA. So, for experimental and quasi, we can also use the ANOVA and t-test. So, t-test, we are going to use if we have a group of participants we are going to compare the mean score of the two groups. So, for our treatment and for our control group. While ANOVA is the analysis of variance. So, we are assessing the presence of the different groups in one independent pertaining to several groups. While two-way ANOVA naman po is pertaining to two independent pertaining to the several group of people. So, it is very important that you know what are the appropriate data analysis or data statistical treatment for your research study. So, so for methodology, these are the micro components that you should have. So you have the research instrument, you have the we have the research design, we have the sampling technique, we have the research instrument, and the data gathering procedure and data analysis. So those are the micro components for writing a methodology. Again, always remember when you are writing a research methodology, so this is the heart of your research. So we are now going to gather information. So it is very important that all the information that we are going to get from our participants are enough for us to assess, for us to evaluate, and for us to get the appropriate answer for our um, statement of the problem or problem of our research. So, without methodology, syempre, magiging, without this part of research, yun nga, without this one, so what will happen to our research? It can be nothing kasi, yun nga, hindi tayo makakapagkuha ng information na makakapag-answer dun sa ating initial inquiry. So, ayun po. I hope you have learned something about this screencast. And if you have questions in mind, if you have further clarifications, um, further violent reactions, and other, um, ayun nga po, other things na gusto nyo pang malinaw ninyo, so you can contact me or you can ask me during our synchronous session po. I'll give you time for that. And I hope you learn about the methodology of a quantitative research. And again, this has been your practical research to Miss Lawrence Ralph Estrella. Thank you for listening. And God bless to all of you. Bye!